Namaste everyone, I'm your co-host Shravani ma'am. Welcome to your favorite learning channel. The topic for today's video is what is tissue and overview of plant tissue. So in the first segment we will be defining certain terms like the tissue and several other terms related to the tissues, and then we would also study about a general overview of plant tissue, and in our next segment of the video we will look at the details of the plant tissue. Okay, so to begin with, let's see what is a tissue or how do we define the term tissue. Okay, so what is a tissue? Tissue is a group of cells. Okay, so it is a group of cells that are similar in structure. Okay, so they are similar in structure and they work together. Okay, so they work together to do what? To achieve a particular function. Okay, so such a group of cells that are similar in structure and that work together to achieve a particular function is called a tissue. Okay, so this is how we can define the term tissue. So the term tissue was first coined by a scientist. Okay, and the scientist was named Bichat. Okay, so Bichat was the scientist who first coined the term tissue in the year 1792. Okay, so the tissues are arranged and designed in such a way to give the highest possible efficiency of function. Okay, so the tissues include, what do they include? Tissues include blood, it includes phloem, and it also includes muscles. Okay, and the study of tissues is known as histology. Okay, so histology is what? It is the study of tissues. So histology is a branch of biology that deals with the study of tissues. Okay, and the term histology was coined by, so histology term was coined by a scientist named Mayer when in the year 1819. Okay, and the founder of histology is Marcello. Okay, Marcello so the founder of histology is Marcello Malpighi. Okay, so this is the scientist who is known as the founder of histology. Now let's discuss about the importance of tissues. Okay, so now we will be discussing about the importance of tissues. Okay, so let's see what are the importance of tissues. So the tissues help to improve the organization. They help to do what? To improve the organization and also the efficiency the organization as well as the efficiency of the organisms. Alright. Then the next importance is that the tissues decrease. They decrease what? They decrease the workload. They decrease the workload of an individual cell. Okay. Then the tissues also help the multicellular organisms. They help the multicellular organisms for higher survival. Okay. And next, the tissues bring about the division of labor. They bring about what? They bring about the division of labor to form what? To form organ as well as the organ systems. Okay, so these are the major importance of tissues. Okay, so how does this tissues form? Okay, so as we already know that there are cells which are the individual structural and functional unit of living system. So we already know about cells. These are the basic structural and functional units in a living system. So there are different types of cells that combine. So a group of cells together combine that perform a similar function to form tissues. Okay. Then what happens? A group of tissues again combine and they form the next organization called the organs. Then what happens? There are several organs that group together and then they form an organ system. And finally, different organ systems that together form an individual organism, and this form of cells grouping to form tissues, tissues grouping to form organs, organs grouping to form organ systems, and finally organ systems grouping to form organism is similar in both the cases, that is in case of plants as well as animals. So in both the plants and animals, this is how the organization of an organism take place. That is, cells are the lowest form of individual thing that combines to form tissues. Then further tissues combine together to form organs, and similarly organs group together to form organ systems, and organ systems together form an organism. Okay, so this is similar in case of both plants and animals. But now that we have learnt about the structural organization, we can find that the structural organization is more specialized and localized in complex animals due to their mobility and different feeding methods than in plants. Okay, and similarly we know that the growth in plants is limited to certain region. There are some tissues in plants that keep dividing throughout their life for the growth and reproduction. Whereas on the other hand, the cell growth in animals is more uniform, and so there is no such demarcation of dividing and non-dividing regions in animals. Okay. So this was a general overview of tissues. Now let's move on to the overview of plant tissues. Okay. Overview of what? Of plant tissues. Okay. So let's see what can we understand by this overview. So based on the dividing capacity of the tissues, plant tissues can be classified into two types. So we can make it in the chart form and say that if we write plant tissues in the center or plant tissue in the center, we can classify plant tissues into two major types, that is meristematic tissues and the permanent tissues. Okay, permanent tissues. So this classification is based on the dividing capacity of the tissues. Okay, so the plant tissues based on the dividing capacity are divided into two major types. One is meristematic tissues. So here in case of meristematic tissues, the cells are capable of cell division, whereas in case of permanent tissues, the mature cells are capable of cell division. Okay, only the mature cells here are capable of cell division. Then further, the permanent tissues can be divided into two types. Okay, one is the simple permanent tissue and the other is the complex permanent tissue. Okay, so in simple permanent tissue, the tissue is composed of only a single type of cell, whereas in case of complex permanent tissues, the tissues are composed of more than one type of cell. Okay, now again, if we talk about the simple permanent tissues, they can further be divided into three types. One is parenchyma tissue, the parenchyma tissue, then there is collenchyma tissue, and finally there is sclerenchyma tissue. Okay, now what happens, this parenchyma and collenchyma tissue can be together clubbed to form chlorenchyma tissue, and this chlorenchyma tissue basically consists of the pigment chlorophyll. We will study about each of these tissues in detail in our next videos. Okay, then now coming to complex permanent tissue, there are two types of complex permanent tissues. One is the xylem tissue and the other one is the phloem tissue. Okay, so xylem tissues further have different types like xylem vessels, tracheids, etc. Then phloem tissues also have different types like sieve tubes, companion cells. We will discuss about all these different types of tissues in detail in our next videos. So now let's quickly revise the things that we have discussed today. So today we first covered about the overview of tissues in general in case of both plants and animals, and then we looked at the overview of plant tissues. So first we define the term tissue. How can we define tissue? So it can be defined as a group of cells that are similar in structure and work together to achieve a particular function. Such group of cells is called a tissue. So a tissue is consisting of a group of cells that are similar in structure and they perform together to achieve a particular function. Now this term tissue was first coined by the scientist Bichat in 1792. Now the tissues, they include blood, phloem, muscles, etc. Then there is a term called histology. So what is histology? It is actually a branch of biology that deals with the study of tissues. Now this term histology was coined by the scientist Mayer in the year 1819, and who is the founder of histology? The founder of histology is Marcello Malpighi. Okay. Then we discussed about the importance of tissues. Now the tissues play very important role in living organisms like in plants and animals. That is, they help to improve the organization and also the efficiency of the organisms. Then they also decrease the workload of an individual cell, and they also help the multicellular organisms to increase their survival. Okay. Then the tissues, they also bring about the division of labor to form different organs and organ systems. Then we discussed how an organism forms. So there are different cells. So cells, as we all know, that they are basic structural and functional units in a living system. So different types of cells that have similar structure and perform similar function, they group together to form tissues. Then different tissues group together to form different organs. Then different organs, they collectively form organ systems, and finally different organ systems, they combine together to form an individual organism, and this form of organization is similar in case of both the plants as well as the animals. Okay, so now that we have understood about the structural organization of organs and organ systems, we can find that the structural organization is more specialized and localized in case of complex animals because of their mobility and different feeding methods than in plants. Then, similarly, we also know that the growth in plants is limited to certain regions. There are some tissues in plants that divide throughout their life for the growth and reproduction. On the other hand, the cell growth in animals is more uniform, and so there is no such demarcation of dividing and non-dividing cells or dividing and non-dividing regions in case of animals. Okay. Then we looked at the overview of plant tissues. So based on the dividing capacity of tissues, the plant tissues can be classified into two types, that is the meristematic tissues or the growing tissues, and then the permanent tissues. So the cells in meristematic tissues are capable of cell division, whereas only the mature cells of permanent tissues are capable of cell division. Then these permanent tissues can further be divided into two types of tissues, that is simple permanent tissues and complex permanent tissues. So the tissues composed here in case of simple permanent tissues, they are composed of only a single type of cells. Whereas in complex permanent tissues, these are the tissues that are composed of more than one type of cell. So the simple permanent tissues have only one type of cell, whereas complex permanent tissues have different types of cells in them. Okay. Then the simple permanent tissues are further divided into three types, that is parenchyma tissue, collenchyma tissue and sclerenchyma tissue. Further, the parenchyma and collenchyma tissue are grouped together which have a pigment called chlorophyll, and they form chlorenchyma tissue. We will study about each of these tissues in our next segment of videos. Then after the simple permanent tissues, we'll talk about the complex permanent tissues. So the complex permanent tissues are further divided into two types, that is the xylem tissue and the phloem tissue. So xylem tissues are of different types like xylem vessels, tracheids, etc. And phloem tissue also are of different types like the sieve tubes, companion cells. These are different types of phloem tissues. Okay. So I hope you all would have got some great insights by watching today's video. Please do not forget to like and share the video. Till then, thank you for watching.